Hey everyone, Kitty Sergeant Steel here, and today I want to talk to you about the Leman Russ Exterminator. So, this here is one of the many variants of the Leman Russ battle tank, or Leman Russ tank, that we have. In past editions, before 10th edition, it was one vehicle or it was two vehicles with different weapon loadouts. Now, in 10th edition, they've broken these down each into their own independent version, which is really great because that means if you wanted to, you could run a lot of different Leman Russes in your list and not break the rule of 3. Points is obviously going to be your biggest barrier, but at least there's a cool option for you to be able to do that. So let's dive into it and talk about why this one here is special and why you might want to consider taking it in your army. So it has a movement of 10, toughness 11, save 2+, 13 wounds, leadership 7, and OC 3. So it's got decent movement. It's got pretty decent toughness. Still going to be wounded on 3s by las cannons, but not bad. With the 2-up save and with you being able to get a little bit of cover, it's a pretty resilient vehicle, and 13 wounds means you can't be taken down too easily. Now, OC 3, it's not going to be great at holding objectives, but it could get the job done if there's nothing else around, or if your opponent doesn't have that many models left in the unit trying to take control of the same objective marker as this vehicle. And this is the same stat line for all basic Leman Russes, so this will be the same across the board. Now, when it comes to Wargear, though, this thing has all kinds of options, but its primary cannon is the Exterminator autocannon. And then we also have, you could take a heavy bolter or a las cannon on the front and the hull, and on the sponsons you could take 2 heavy bolters, 2 heavy flamers, 2 melta-guns, or 2 plasma cannons. So lots of different options for the sponson weapons. You can also take either a storm bolter or a heavy stubber as your pintle mounted weapon. I always do heavy stubbers because they look cool. And then you can also do a hunter killer missile. Now, downside, just gotta be honest about the kit, I don't think there's a good spot to put hunter killer missiles on this kit that doesn't look goofy. So none of mine have them. But I've seen other people do it, and most people kind of put them on the side plate here, or maybe this part here on the turret, right? I just can't figure out a way that aesthetically I enjoy, so I have not built any of mine with the hunter killer missiles, but I did add the pintles so that I could add the heavy stubber on. So anyhow, let's talk about its abilities. It is Deadly Demise D3, so it'll do a few more wounds if it explodes. And it does have the damage where if you get down to 4 or less wounds, you subtract 1 from your hit rolls. Now what makes this unique is that it has Withering Hail. So let's talk about Withering Hail ability, and then we'll talk about the Exterminator autocannon in more detail. Withering Hail is in your shooting phase. After this model has shot, select one enemy unit. Hit, so you got to hit for this to work, by 1 or more of those attacks made with the Exterminator autocannon. Until the end of the phase, each time a friendly Astra Militarum unit makes an attack that targets that enemy unit, improve the armor penetration characteristic of that attack by 1. The same enemy unit cannot be affected by this ability once per phase. So, the same enemy unit can only be affected by this ability once per phase. I think I misread that first time. So, in other words, you can't take 3 of these and then give all your units AP3 against an enemy model. It can only affect an enemy unit once per phase. Something good to keep in mind. Now, the Exterminator autocannon itself is a pretty awesome weapon in its own right, even without this ability. It is Rapid Fire 4 Twin Linked. So we're re-rolling wound rolls, and we're adding 4 shots, but it's range 48, 4 attacks, up to 8 attacks if we're at 24 inch or less range, strength 9, -1, flat 3 damage. That autocannons in 10th edition are just fantastic weapons, so that makes this very versatile to take down models. Say if they have, subtract 1 from the damage characteristic, well then you're still killing Chaos Space Marines or Space Marines. You could take out Terminators. You could significantly injure enemy vehicles or monsters with this. It's a really, really good weapon to have. And then with the 8 shots without any buffs, means you're going to be hitting with 4 of them, hopefully wounding with 2 to 4 of those shots. And if those go through, that could be a decent amount of damage. On its own, by itself, this model doesn't do a whole lot, which is why I think a lot of people look over it. Because you're going, oh, okay, I'm not really going to take out any units with it. I'm going to plink away a few wounds here and there. So what are you actually doing with this? This, like the Scout Sentinel, is a synergy unit. So what I would do is take this and put it in your midfield or backfield. And you want to kind of tuck it in around terrain, and you want to have you want to have lanes of fire that you could pop this into pretty easily. Come around a corner, see a unit, shoot at it. And these will be the key units that you need that extra AP to take down, or to negate their cover, or to make sure that your infantry with their las guns can get some insane wounds on a model they otherwise wouldn't have any business doing that on. You could buff your battle cannons with this. That's a great option. You could buff your Rogel Dorn with the Oppressor Cannon. There's all kinds of really great synergies where that extra pip of AP matters. And where it may not matter is if you're fighting an army or certain units that have an invulnerable save, because then the extra AP may or may not help. But if it forces your opponent onto their invulnerable save, then that can also be a great benefit. What I would recommend is to probably take either heavy bolters or heavy flamers for your sponson weapons, and maybe a las cannon or the heavy bolter for your hull mounted weapon. The reason I would recommend the sponson weapons that way is so you can make sure that you stay out of melee, so you can take out Space Marines and other infantry and elite models getting close to you, whittle those down, keep them away from you, because you want to be able to hit your opponent. Remember, because that's where you're going to get the buff from this, is just hitting them. So you want to keep this alive, you want to keep it out of combat, and that's why a midfield or a backfield is the best place for this unit. Now, when you combine it with Scout Sentinels, right? Scout Sentinels do daring recon, and then you hit the unit with the Exterminator autocannon. So your whole army against that same unit is now rerolling ones and an extra 1 AP. That's before any buffs from tank commanders or Leontis or your other commanders for your infantry to add 1 to their ballistic skill, or add 1 to their rapid fire characteristic, and so forth. And so that could make a pretty big difference. And adding this in there could really be devastating. So this is a unit that's really going to help you get wounds in, which is why you don't see me taking it. The lists I typically build right now in 10th edition aren't about killing my opponent. They're about control. I want to overwhelm the objectives and I want to hold them. But if you want a list where you're able to take out your opponent, this is almost an auto-include unit to make sure that you can get that extra little buff that you might need to be able to take down your opponent's army. Now, if you're wondering why my turret pops off the way it does, I have it magnetized so I can swap out the different cannon options on this Leman Russ, so I can use all 4 options that are available to it, which is also why mine looks a little goofy, because the shield is missing, so that I can do that. But just so you can see, I keep picking it up and it's coming apart. It is meant to do that because of the way I magnetized it. Kind of a mid filming explanation here of kind of what's going on with this vehicle. Yeah, so I would tuck it in to like situations like this, in and around terrain where it can't be seen, and then with its movement have it pop out and then hit an enemy unit so the rest of your army can get that buff. That's really the way I'd run this. I'd also kind of put it maybe on your backfield objective if you have a lane of fire from that objective. This way, you can hold something with OC3. You're going to create, it's a pretty big model, so it's a pretty big no deep strike bubble around it. It's a great thing about vehicles in your backfield, and also lines of infantry spread out, is it helps with that no deep strike. So that's something else you can do with this. Just remember, keep all your other stuff within 18 inches so that your enemy can't deep strike onto this and take it out, and then you lose your synergy unit, right? So just something to kind of keep in mind when you're positioning and playing with this model in midfield and backfield. Also, make sure you ask your opponent, hey, do you have any way to deep strike in less than 9 inches from my unit? Any stratagems or unit abilities that let you do that? So you can make sure you're planning to keep your unit safe. But that's it. This is really just a synergy unit, and it's going to be there to buff your army that way. I don't think it's an auto-include in most lists. It depends on your type. Like I said, I typically build overwhelm the objective type lists where I bring in wave after wave of Cadians and I hold things down. It's very effective. But if you want to go with killing, this is a great unit to add to your army. And a lot of players use it, and it's a lot of fun. So definitely, if you're thinking about the other Leman Russes too, that extra AP on your battle cannons, for instance, can make a huge difference in your games. So just keep that in mind. Other than that, that's it. That's all I got. I wouldn't really recommend sinking too many points into this, because all you got to do is hit with it for it to really matter. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend a Tech Priest or a Leontis or a Tank Commander to like hug this the whole game, and to make sure that its machine spirit feels so supported. I would just let it do its own thing on its own and keep it well screened, so your opponent doesn't prevent you from being able to hit them or take it out too easily. So I would tuck it in terrain, pop it out for Ladens of Fire, and use it that way. And that's the overall tactics I'd recommend with this unit. All right, that's it. That's all I have for today. So I hope you've enjoyed this unit review, and I hope you've enjoyed the other ones as well. If you haven't seen them, there will be a link here at the end of the video to the playlist. If you've enjoyed them, please like and subscribe to my channel, and also check out the affiliate links I have in my video description to support all the other awesome companies that do help support me, or the things I just love, quite honestly. There's some links in there that don't actually generate any revenue for me, but it's just because they're awesome companies, and I really do believe in their products. So just something I always want to promote and help other businesses out as best I can. But as always, have fun wargaming, and remember, Cadia stands.